I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
We've got 3 bona fide, full-fledged, red, black, and green-blooded Garveyites in the building, including Mwariama Kamau. And I want to get him on the mic to introduce our first guest, the Potentate. And I want to take the honor of introducing our second guest, no stranger to the airwaves of life. But please, Brother Mwariama, introduce our first guest.
Yes, sir. Great Garvey Day to all in the listening audience, to everyone. This is Brother Mwariama Kamau, once again on the case for the race. I am here with a couple of executive officers of the UNIA Executive Council. First, I'd like to introduce a man who's no stranger to the area, a man who's committed 50 years plus service to his race in this Banneker City area. The Honorable Potentate and Supreme Commissioner of the UNIA, the Honorable Dr. Ahmed Assalaam, is with us today.
Greetings.
And we have a legend in the D.C. area. If you've ever been at a black-centered event where African people are discussing issues relevant to African people, you will see a tall, imposing figure in a hat in the back of the room, on the side of the room, who, even when he's sitting down, looks like he's standing up. And he will enter the room saying, "There is no culture without agriculture." And you will hear that chant today. And if you've been on Howard University's campus, you've been one of the fortunate many to be tightened up by the elder, trying to get from one spot to the other. And the elder may say, "What is the relationship of the red, black, and green flag to African unity?" And if we are at an African event and begin with Lift Every Voice and sing, what is the challenge of that? And you may not have the answer, and 30 minutes later, you're still trying to figure out the initial question. Baba Oduno has tightened many of us up. And it is an indeed a pleasure to have Professor Tarik Oduno with us to talk Garveyism and DC's history, along with DC's history of the UNIA divisions within DC, but also his own oral history. So I want to just welcome Baba Oduno to the airwaves. Good morning, Baba.
Boma, Texas in the house. All those Texans, Zydeco people from Southwest Louisiana, and always one God, one aim, one destiny, and we honor our parents and our parents' parents. Peace. It's been a while since I've been on the air at WPFW. Used to have a segment, History is a Weapon, back during the late 70s and the early 80s. Peace.
All right, so I'm going to ask our potentate, give us, if you can, in a lengthy snapshot, what is the current state of affairs of the UNIA, and what are the current projects that you are working on?
Well, the current state of affairs in our current project is actually one and the same. We've been reuniting the organization, restructuring it, so that we can move forward through the 21st century and rebuild all the things that we've had in the past, but to bring our people together all over the world under the banner of race first and one God, one aim, one destiny, because we're so disunited and so divided as a people, and everyone is out there saying that there's more than one UNIA. Well, there's only one UNIA. And the two UNIAs incorporated that Garvey himself founded, reunited in 2007. And as I said, we've been rebuilding and restructuring. Right now we're on a campaign, a membership campaign. We're trying to bring everybody all over the world back home. Everybody's trying to replicate and duplicate the UNIA. They're taking bits and pieces and starting their own organizations, and we're wondering why we're still so scattered and disunited as a people when we have the plan. The UNIA still exists. Everybody thinks we're something of the past. We have never ceased to exist. We're continuing to work for the race, and we want everyone to come home, and let's unite as one people, and let's work this plan that Garvey and our ancestors gave to us. It succeeded for us then. It's been succeeding for every organization that gets out there, but the reason they're not being 100% successful is because they only have a little piece. Let's take the whole thing and let's all work together for the good of the race. One God, one aim, one destiny.
And if we can, let me just follow up now, because I'm a member of the Association of Black Psychologists, and I can completely say that we owe a large debt of gratitude, which we probably don't even understand how large that debt is, to the UNIA. But when we talk membership, we realize, the membership question is usually, what do you get from membership? So let me ask a quick question. If somebody wants to join now, what do they do? What do you get as a member? What are your responsibilities as a member?
Well, if you go visit www.theunia.com or unia-acl.org, then you'll be able to download all the information about how to become a member, what the qualifications are, and what the benefits are. Everyone in the race is a member of the UNIA, an ordinary member. But once you pay your dues, then you are first in line for the benefits of the organization. But people always ask us, what do I get? What do I get? And that's what's wrong with our race, is what are you bringing in? We're looking for people that want to come in and work for the race, to uplift our race all over the world, and not come in looking for what they're going to get. What you're going to get is a united race and a united African people where we can take our place in the world and our leadership in the world. So that's what we're asking. People with all qualifications, all walks of life, to come to the organization, and let's do this thing for the good of the race.
Now, we got Baba Oduno in the studio, and for those folks who are familiar with Baba Oduno, we know he has a story that spans many decades. Baba Oduno, I want you to see if we can begin with where you were first informed about the UNIA, and who were some of those first people that brought you into the understandings of Garvey and Garveyism.
The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind. We want to always thank the Almighty God for our parents. We also want to thank Almighty God for our detractors, because they help us to stay not only on point, but ahead of the point. I would like to say, and that's why I gave a shout out to Beaumont, Texas. And it may have been a shout out to South Carolina. It may have been a shout out to Washington, D.C. It may have been a shout out to Seattle, Washington. Our people have always been sliced in three different people. You have one group of people who want to be everything else like everybody else. You have another group of people within us, they want to straddle. They're trying to figure out which way the wind is going to blow. Then you have a group of people who are like a seed, a mustard seed, an alfalfa seed, and those people are the soil, the chemistry, and they want to move forward. When I was born, and I'm not the only one, some people from other ethnics didn't want us in their hospitals. So what happened is that in Beaumont, Texas, the Sprotts, 4 brothers, all 4 of them, they either went to Prairie View, they went to Fisk, and they went to Meharry. And they came back to Beaumont and built their own hospital. Yes, it was a small hospital, but it was our own. And you can go down each area. You'll find the people who belong to the Negro Business League. Yes, we can talk about the Sage, but we can also talk about Isaiah Montgomery of Mount Bayou, Mississippi. We were never a people who were looking only to depend upon other people in terms of accepting our own, and being ourselves. And I don't want to talk about this at this time. There's a lot of 50th anniversaries for Mississippi for other people helping us. And I'm not poo-pooing on that. But we have to raise the bar up. Who were the people who were doing things like the student Malcolm X, like the student El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, who came out of a family, Louise Little, Early, or Reverend Earl Little. And too often, I love you, integrationist folks. I love you, pluralist folks. I love you, even moderate red, black, and green folks. But the time has been well spent that it was in my childhood of observing people having their own golf course, having their own mortuary to bury you. So somewhere in that mix, but I would like to say it was years later that there was a pastor in the Live Oak Missionary Baptist Church by the name of Reverend Dr. Borden, who came from St. Kitts. And for those of you who may not see a picture, Beaumont is on the coast, and it's a port city. And until you really, really learn the economics, the military strategicness of port cities in the world, whatever you thought you knew, as someone would say about white supremacy, but we say in the economic world, whatever you thought you knew about whatever it is you know less about the military economics of port cities, you will be better put together. So, my high school, a right shock, Beaumont is on the coast. We remember those sisters who, no, they were not slaves. They were prisoners of war who were brought in from the Senegambia to create the rice in South Carolina during the 1730s and even earlier. So Beaumont picked it up a little bit earlier because Beaumont was west. But those are the kind of environments, because we who are spiritual people on the productive side, because there are spiritual people on some other sides, but this radio station and this particular is not about that today. We want to talk about, this was in the environment. If you wanted something, if you wanted to have your shoes repaired, you had your own shoe repair. And it wasn't just because we were in a situation of being segregated. It was because those skills, you have to go back and look at the indigenous skills of indigenous people right here in this land, long before the coming of other nationals. So getting back to Borden being from St. Kitts, even people who coming in to go to Prairie View, people coming in to go to Bishop College, they had to come into the port, whether the port was Galveston, whether the port was the dredge port of 1908 in Houston, whether the port was New Orleans. And so these are the kinds of things. But what happened is that my wonderful civil rights brothers and sisters of the 1950s and the 1960s, I would ask you to look at the human rights, God-given rights, brothers and sisters of the 1860s and the 1850s, and lift that up, those 50 years, and even go back 50 years before that. I love you, I appreciate you, but what happens is that when you take black coffee, and I'm not talking about black in terms of color, and you put cream in it, and I guess they'll put some chemistry of synthetics in the coffee, it will soon become something else. So in Beaumont, Texas, I'm thankful that I went to schools that there were only people of African descent. That the high school was named after two what you call educators who look like us. I mean, I don't need to talk about the Italians or the Amish or things like that. People tend to do things for and with themselves, for themselves, and the people who hook up with other people to do things, they are part of the indirect detractors. So in Beaumont, Texas, I came up in the Church of God in Christ. Yeah. And I'll just say this. it wasn't an accident that Martin Luther King II spoke at Mason Temple. It was because Charles Harrison Mason had been arrested and put in jail during World War I because he and the people in the Church of God in Christ stated that the men were not to go into the military of this government, and even if they went into the military of this government, they were not to bear arms. My Church of God in Christ people out there, and my Church of Under God or whatever, we need to look at who are the progressive people today in the spiritual institutions. And I say to you that it was in my barbershop of Chester Carey who introduced us to the name of Marcus Garvey. Guess what? We came up in the environment of Jack Johnson. And so we came up in that environment of Madam C.J. Walker. We came up in that environment of Dr. Nannie Helen Burroughs right here in the city. In D.C., I'm putting a shout out to you. Why isn't there a day for Nannie Helen Burroughs from the government of Washington, D.C.? And we don't look as chocolate as we once did. That's because we didn't take advantage of when we had Malcolm X Park to establish it. So it was an environment. We appreciated other people, but guess what? They were doing something for themselves. And guess what? And guess what? When you're in a port city, we did rice. We harvested rice as a child. We bucked hay as a child. No, I was not a farmer, but I was a friend of a farmer. Peace. We have to relook at our HBCUs before they were colleges and universities to see when these schools were schools for doing for self, producing everything that we use and using and buying those things. So the city of Beaumont, Texas is what you call the mini Black Wall Street, as some of us say that Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was the major Black Wall Street. And we need to stop talking about the Black Wall Street. There were Black Wall Streets across this country. It's just that there were smaller versions of the Tulsa. Thank you for allowing me to share. One God, one aim, one destiny.
No, definitely thank you very much for that. Again, you're listening to I Mix What I Like here at WPFW 89.3 FM, and that was what for some of us is the legendary Baba Oduno, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. We only have a few minutes before we have to take a quick break. So I don't know, but I did want to ask at some point about your own particular method of engagement and teaching. And I'm thinking of the first time you and I met. I don't even know if you remember this. It happened at a place that I no longer frequent, unfortunately, at this point in time. But I had on a Malcolm X T-shirt. And you and I had never met before. And the first thing you said to me was, how come you don't have Garvey on that T-shirt? And from there began, an intermittent and repeating but ongoing teaching session from between, me learning from you over all these years. But I thought that was an interesting and challenging method of engagement. I didn't even know your name at that time. I don't know if you knew mine, but it was like you saw the Malcolm. You said, "Why isn't it Garvey?" But I've come to appreciate that over the years, and I'm wondering if you could say a few words, or maybe we could table that for the other side. I don't know if we have enough time to get into that right now. But I did want to have at some point have talk about that.
60 seconds. It is to honor your mother and your father. Even though I said Garvey, I'm talking about Louise Little and Earl Little, John Little, his dad, and Sarah Little, his mama, because the language and our genealogy was disjointed away from us. In a similar thing, if you would go to the Philippines and see how those people who were under the Spanish for 400 years, and we can talk a little bit more about that, but it is to honor those who you came through, whether you know them, and they don't have to be up in the big stars, because the greater, whether it's counterproductive or whether it's productive, is usually in the less seen and the unseen. Honor those who helped to pave the path for us, the very thing that we'll find ourselves in this radio station at WPFW 89.3.
I just personally would have thought it would have been that when you were younger, you liked the song Tighten It Up. And so when you dance, you used to, you know, you was like do the tighten up, and you just kept walking around, and that'd be the one song that you, when you see everybody, you'll be like, tighten up now. It's time to tighten them up, because you see folks. I remember Brother Melvin was a grad student, but he was an undergrad at Howard as well, and I had my back to one corner of the campus, and he had his back to the other corner. Well, you were coming from my back, and Melvin pieced out the conversation real quickly. And when I turned around, there you were, and you said, "Brother, you got a minute?" And I was like, "If I didn't, I do now."
Right.
And that was one of the famous tighten up sessions where I saw Melvin, and I was like, "You ain't gonna be ducking Baba Oduno's lessons all of these times." But I get the tighten up because we are ducking those lessons. And so you got to raise up the bar, so folks is like, all right, everybody gonna duck under? We gonna see you underneath this bar. Ain't no more ducking. We tighten you up.
Thank you.
No, so Dr. Hayes in the building. This is Jared Ball. This is I Mix What I Like, WPFW 89.3 FM. We're going to take a quick break. And we have a couple of messages coming up, including a message from our brother D Noble for all of you out there who are talking about I'm Mike Brown and I'm Trayvon Martin and I'm Oscar Grant. We have a little message for you on that. So we're going to take a quick break, let everybody catch their breath, and we'll be right back with much more here at I Mix What I Like in WPFW 89.3 FM. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute. Peace.
It's Blackfist Fridays on
I Mix What I Like.
I am not Michael Brown. I wasn't gunned down and left in the street like trash. Police aren't stopping over my dried blood while bombing my hood with tear gas. My mama's face ain't drowning in putrid tears and thick globs of snot. My daddy's soul ain't on fire crying while his baby boy shot. My niggas ain't weeping as they reminisce on the last we shared last weekend. My black flesh ain't been pierced by white cop bullet. My blood ain't leaking. I ain't Eric Garner. I ain't got cops on my neck just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and squeezing till they choke me lifeless and my black stop breathing. I ain't John Crawford. Police didn't murder me in Walmart for holding a fake weapon on sale in the toy section. My baby mom ain't have to hear the police chief say the cops made the right decision while she tries to explain why I'm never coming home to our small children. I'm not Jonathan Farrell, not Ezell Ford. I'm not Sharice Francis, not Rakia Boyd. I'm not Renisha McBride. I'm still alive, so the question remains, how the f*** I ain't gonna ride? No excuses, but the truth is we'd rather be dead. That's why we march holding signs of I am Trayvon above our heads. That's the wishful thinking of the already defeated, an empty slogan for those who have already conceded that this world can't be radically changed. Thus, there's no incentive to organize and strategize to redirect our lives towards revolution. We'd rather be walking bullseyes, wondering if we're next when they shooting. We scream we bout that life, but our lack of action says we bout that slow death. We bout heavy sobs in between stolen breaths. We bout pictures on t-shirts, candlelight vigils, funerals, hashtag memorials. Our lives are rushed dress rehearsals for death. Long prayers with Jesus help us feel alive when we just lambs for the slaughter. Sitting ducks waiting to be plucked out of broke levee water. And while we play possum, they get more ruthless. Notice the pigs' pistols have replaced the Klan's nooses. They institutionalize the terror. We pay taxes to the institutions. We lay prostrate for the state. Hold silent vigils at the courthouse gates instead of dragging out the cops, jurors, and judges as the heads on stakes. We place foolish faith in their district attorneys. Meanwhile, they place our kids on gurneys. We chant no justice, no peace, but suffer injustice and peace. We scared to scream f the police, let alone bucket the beast. We think we big meats, but they run in the streets, armed to the teeth with a license to kill. And all the black bodies they leave behind are proof that they will. They yell, don't move, then shoot when we steal. But I ain't shot yet. I am not Oscar Grant. I am not Ayanna Jones, a 7-year-old girl shot by the police while asleep in her own home. I am alive. which means there is no excuse to not struggle for revolution, study for revolution, organize for revolution. I am alive. I must revolt. We must win.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like.
The African American Historical News Journal. Own a part of history. WPFW invites you to own a part of African American history. This is an heirloom with actual articles from the 1700s through 1950. Where else can this much living history be found in one place for only $25? The African American Historical News Journal features articles about slave revolts, abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, activists such as Paul Robeson, the daily living of freed black people, and more. This collector's item is a great gift to pass down to your children and grandchildren and share with your family and friends. As part of our Thank You to Our Listeners campaign, we are offering you an opportunity to receive this fabulous 58-page book for only $25 pledge for softcover and $40 for hardcover. To get your copy, visit our website at www.wpfw.org or call our Thank You hotline at 1-800-284-1315. Don't miss this opportunity to have this compilation of newspaper articles and first-hand accounts of our nation's history in your personal library today.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, welcome back to I Mix What I Like right here at WPFW 89.3 FM. Again, iMixWhatILike.org for more information on this show and more. At I Mix What I Like for all your relevant social media, and iMixWhatILike@gmail.com for your comments and responses to the show. Just real quick before we get back to our guests and our wonderful conversation this morning, a shout out to D Noble on the track you just heard, I Am Not That Corpse, that poem you just heard, and we'll be looking to get him on the program and not too long from now to talk more about that and more of his work. But in terms of this African American Historical News Journal that you can get for $25 supporting WPFW, at I Mix What I Like, if you call now in the next 30 minutes and if we get, I don't know how many, but if we get a significant number of folks who want to pick up this journal to support this station, we pledge here at this show to do a special series, or a special segment at least, of programming with our resident expert on the black press and so much more, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows. We pledge that we will get him to come on in and talk in detail about the history behind some of these press pieces and the journalism that's contained in this African American Historical News Journal. So just our little additional piece that we'll offer here at I Mix What I Like if you go ahead and support that journal. But without further ado, here at I Mix What I Like, Dr. Hay, please take it over and bring us back to our conversation, man.
So we're in the studio with Mwariama Kamau, UNIA-ACL international organizer, Dr. Ahmed Assalaam, potentate of the UNIA, and Baba Tarik Oduno. Baba Oduno, I want to continue this piece on kind of the oral history and where you developed your Garveyite perspectives. You talked about being from Beaumont, Texas, and the do-for-self mentality of Africans who had no choice but to do for self. And it's a very different day as you identify that once you have choices that you may have others do for you, we may be less inclined to do for ourselves. But there are segments of our people of African ancestry who are still of the mindset to do for self. So in the introduction to the UNIA and the organization, who were some of those people? What were some of those moments that you actually found the connection in the larger model? Because it's hard to see it when you're in the midst of it. But once you get a sense of why this philosophical framework and this approach to life and this imperative of race first is critical, you get a real sense of the organizations that you need to be a part of. And Dr. Assalaam, I'll ask you to do the same. When did you begin to walk into the UNIA? When did the UNIA begin to walk into you?
First, I'd like to say peace to the house out there in the WPFW audience. I would like to say that the ends you serve that are selfish, will take you no further than yourself, but the ends you serve that are for all in common will take you even into eternity. By the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. As a matter of fact, if you were listening to the Honorable Henry McNeil Turner, you would have had an echo of that same thought. Had you been listening to the Honorable Paul Cuffe, you would have had the same thought. If you would have been listening to Maria Stewart, and we have to cover that at another time, you would have heard the echo of the same thought. If you were listening to the Honorable Nannie Helen Burroughs, you would have had the same thought. For those who talk about Asar Aset, or male, female, when did I walk into this? When I left Beaumont, Texas, a few decades ago, as a student athlete, scholar student athlete, I went to Seattle University, 2,400 miles from Beaumont, Texas, to the Pacific Northwest. I happen to have run into the Black Cultural Center with the Honorable Keeve Bray, who was an understudy of Paul Robeson, who graduated from Massillon, Ohio High School under Paul Brown, who was in World War II. I also ran into the inimitable, the sagacious, the profound Mother Sarah Lynch, who being from the Caribbean, who was a part of the UNIA African Community League with her husband, Joseph Lynch, the Evergreen Division number 50, right there in Seattle, Washington. And so the Garvey Bookstore, right there in Seattle, Washington. I know you've heard of the Garvey Bookstore in San Francisco and then later on in Oakland, but in Seattle. Also the Garveyites who were in Vancouver, British Columbia. Sometimes we on the East Coast do our thing as though that's the only thing or the major thing, or vice versa, or from the South to the North or what have you. And so in this, Mother Lynch, because her husband was departed in a similar way that the Honorable Josiah Arnold Ford was departed years earlier with his wife, Mignon Ennis Ford, with the Ethiopian connection. But let me get back to Seattle, Washington. And in Seattle, Washington, since I was considered by some, I didn't consider myself that, I was considered a big man on campus. As a matter of fact, I was mentioning to Dr. Haight, there was a quota that you could not put no more than 3 African descendants on a basketball court at a particular time, usually. This is from the 1965-66 of Seattle University, which was the only team that defeated the championship team of Texas Western, that actually defeated the all so-called white Caucasian team of Kentucky in the Maryland Fieldhouse in March of 1966. And so, even though it was in a liberal, supposedly, territory of the state of Washington, and at Seattle University, sister college university with Georgetown here, you will see the pictures don't tell too many lies. But anyway, each Saturday we would work with the young people in the Seattle area. They call it the Central community. And I just didn't get into this time I got to Seattle, but fortunately I went there in June of 1966. And so I want to say that when you talk about the Evergreen Division number 50 of the UNIA African Community League, that was directly connected with the UNIA African Community League out of New York City, 1918. Morma and the Potentate will get into more details. And so this was African people. Matter of fact, even the native people, the Lummi Indians, were doing something for themselves with the Indian fishing rights. The Peltier and a number of other people. And we don't have the time to give you all the details of those things. That's for another show at another time, hopefully. But this is how I was and here it is in 1968, helping to set up a black student union at Bellevue Community College. This paper came out November the 4th, 1968, and it doesn't look so much like me, but it's black student union leaders says Negroes are taught to feel inferior. Yes, that's me with my horn rim glasses on. That's me when I was roughly about 20, 21 years of age. And that's why I honor young people. Because if you begin to check the ages of people when they started doing what they were doing, they were not chronologically up in the decades. They were teenagers. They were before they were teenagers. And some of us who were maybe slower in our growth and development, not slow because we were slow, but some flowers take a little bit longer to bloom. So what happens is that I've tried to share with people. I've even tried to share with the people at the University of the District of Columbia and Bowie and other places that we need to take a little bit more time and look at this intra-generational things. Younger people under 60, I love you. All the way to under 20, all the way to under 10. But there's a standard that we have to consider with each other. We want to hear you, because if we don't hear you, the world will not hear you. And so my helping to set up what you call black student unions at Bellevue Community College, my helping with the black student union at Western Washington State College at that time, in Bellingham, Washington. Anyone who know about the Indian fishing rights, about the farmers, with the migrant workers, with Cesar Chavez. Many of us, when we were in school, we were supporters of that because we wouldn't buy that lettuce. We wouldn't buy those grapes. What we would do, and we sure wouldn't buy no grapes that didn't have no seeds in them. I don't think they had it at that time. Our Own History Club. Thank you. When I moved from Denver, Colorado in 1971, I had been a teacher at the Muhammad University of Islam, number 51. That's the details another time. The Our Own History Club was established when I came to D.C. August the 15th, 1975. Just before my Earth Day. As a matter of fact, excuse the first person singular, I'll be a young, the 31st of August. Sunday. But I never forget that Frank Robinson from Beaumont, Texas was also born on that day in 1935, who was the initial manager of a baseball team. I do not forget Fred Hampton, who was born on that day. It would be 66 years, but he was a year younger, born in 1948. Even, interestingly, Eldridge Cleaver. I do not forget Mama Marilyn Preston Killingham, who was born on that particular day. But let's get to the Our Own History Club. The Our Own History Club actually came from the idea of reading a number of things that I read, but it was concretized when I read Race First by Dr. Tony Martin. And in there was a news organ that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey had that was called Our Own. So you folks out there who think that Brother Oduno just named something, I try to tell people, but sometimes they don't want to hear. Sometimes I don't tell it the right way. But anyway, let's forgive each other and go forward, okay? But the beautiful thing about it is that it was the Our Own. And you know how people get these Kiswahili words and they get these West African words. I said, no, let's just call it Our Own. And so with the establishment, I began to look around this city in between the 75, 76, and I did some things with the spiritual development class. I said, you know one thing? I don't see a unit of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Community League, the business wing, not just the Black Star Line, the business wing. And I said, wait a minute. You mean to tell me some of us came through here for African Liberation Day in 1972? All the way through, how is it that we less honoring of those organizationally and internationally? I said, well, since they don't have one, I'll do just as the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey stated when he read Up From Slavery, He Met His Doom. He said, where is our presidents, our kings, our potentates, our men and women of large, big affairs? And so with the Our Own History Club, as a matter of fact, right here, I have some of the names. I'm not going to call the names because we don't have time, but This is to the members of the Woodson Banneker Division. I'm jet soon in ahead because this is in 82. But the Our Own History Club was established as a study group. If you're playing chess, you got to have a study club. If you're playing music, you got to have a study sessions. If you're a weaver, you're going to get under weavers. And if you want to have a level of excellence, you got to have food. And so since most people know that I'm a George Washington Carver Cub, you got to have a club in all that. And you don't just go take a flight to the continent of Africa or take a flight to Brazil and you come back and you think that people want to have you as a leader. We call that a wabenza in that particular point in time. I'm talking about this. But getting back, the Our Own History Club decided to establish, to study our own history and utilize the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Community League as a standard to guide us. One of the purposes that we will be a group of men and women who study, in particular, these classics of ours. And we would have always a spiritual meditation or devotion time because we are bound by the Constitution of the UNIA of one God, one aim, one destiny. That's our motto. However, our faith is confidence in self. And we were doing those kind of things in the Our Own History Club. And we didn't not cover other organizations. Because if I was to ask someone in the Our Own History Club, what can we do when people say, well, you know when Malcolm went to Mecca? We say, okay. We say, which decade did he leave this country, going to the continent of Africa, going to the peninsula of Arabia? Most of us were not able to. It's right there but people wanted you to see when he left from under the direct tutelage of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, when in fact the UNIA, African Community League, the Moorish Science Temple of America, and the Nation of Islam, in a lot of ways, are connected tighter than some of us want to deal with it. I'm talking to them Malcolmites. I'm talking to them what they call Black August. Come on, Black August. Come on, Black August. I love you. I appreciate you. The Our Own History Club came along to show the interconnectedness of the genealogical continuity, the spiritual continuity. I love Garvey. I love the UNIA African Community League, but I cannot look at the UNIA African Community League and do not look at the Negro Convention movements and the women who came into the Colored Women Association. And so what we did is that we set up book clubs. We had the Book of the Month. I think one of the initial books may have been Up from Slavery. We had the book, The Miseducation of the Negro. And then once we went through the training, we were supposed to have gone through the training for a whole year. And so we come into the New York City with Brother Prempeh. Ran into him in 1979 at Girls and Boys High. And we decided to utilize the Our Own History Club, which is the founding water boy. I like to use it because the UNIA African Community League was already in the ground in what we call District 3, which makes up Washington, D.C., all of Virginia, and all of Maryland. And in my close, I would like to say, my wonderful listening audience, that when you follow the plan, I remember Bishop Tucker said, Marcus Garvey didn't give me no backbone, but he gave me a plan. And my brothers and my sisters, if you would do due diligence, who want to do due diligence, you'll find out that the Our Own History Club was a study club in a similar way that came much, much later, like the All African People's Revolutionary Party, or any other study clubs that we may have by whatever names that we have, but we will find out that those study clubs was concretized in the 12 million, 10 million, 8 million followers of the UNIA African Community League. They say, well, what are we doing now? It is because of the detractors within and the detractors without. And I would like to say to you that hopefully those brothers and sisters who came through the Our Own History Club, this weekend of the 28th and the 31st of October will be the 35th anniversary of the establishment of the Our Own History Club here in Washington, D.C., which was no more than a continuation of when I was in Seattle, when I was in Beaumont, Texas, and I don't like to use the I because it's the we of that pastor who was at the Live Oak Missionary Baptist Church, that barber, Chester Carey, that barber, Perry Coleman, and Herman Duhon, who were in those barbershops. And I'll say this and sit down. Woodson said that ideas can stand a better hearing in certain Negro and colored barbershops than they can stand in the Negro and colored universities and others around this country and around the world. Thank you.
Right. No, thank you very much, and we definitely thank you for that history. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up now. We only have a couple of minutes left. We have to make way for a number of things, including Community Watch and Comment. Then at 11 o'clock, Don't Forget the Blues. Rather, 11 o'clock, Community Watch and Comment. Then Friday's edition of Don't Forget the Blues with Ida Campbell at 12 noon. And 1 o'clock, the Latino Media Collective at their new time. And Jay Winter, Nightwolf. The Nightwolf Show comes up at 2 o'clock, and much more great program here at WPFW 89.3 FM.
Yeah, Baba Oduno and Dr. Assalaam and Brother Mwariama, I want to thank y'all for coming on
Absolutely.
and continuing this conversation about the 100th anniversary, the development of the UNIA, the Garveyism, the philosophy of do for self, race first, and providing a collective airwave of 50,000 watts of tightening people up. We will hopefully see you in the whirlwind and continue to tighten people up. We're going to have to get y'all back on the air. And for the Potentate, we look forward to more commentary from you. And people, can you give the website one more time quickly?
Yes, but first I'd like to give a shout out to His Excellency the Honorable Cleophas Miller Jr., President General and Administrator of the UNIA and the fifth successor to the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Our website is www.unia-acl.com or www.unia-acl.org.
Thank you all very much. We'll link to that at iMixWhatILike.org. Thank you all very much for coming in, and peace to everybody if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next week.